exactly the radicals on both sides. As soon as you don't have direct information, you start to make up bullshit. I'm sorry to say it that easy, but if you don't have direct information, you get second-hand information, second-hand literature information. Even in university, if you write a paper, there's a difference between a direct source and an indirect source. So for me, in Interfaith, the direct source is the Muslim community that I engage directly, and the indirect source is my 750 Jewish organizations telling me what I'm supposed to think about my Muslim community in my case. This year, I'm very proud to say that we had people from countries like Iran, like Saudi Arabia, like Lebanon. We had people from Israel, of course, from Canada, from the Western world. We had people from South Africa. We had people from Northern Africa. And what you see in this next generation is something that I think personally is incredible. We're a very young organization, and I don't want to say that we're able to do this and we're not able to do that, because much of that still has to be proven and has to be scientifically researched. But there's one thing that we can say, and we're proud about that. We are able to destroy stereotypes and prejudices which others build up over sometimes 25 years in 7 days. It works. We can, I promise you here and now, I can get you a Saudi Arabian 25-year-old and an Israeli 24-year-old, or a Canadian 21-year-old and a Pakistani 22-year-old. They never talked to each other before. They think the worst about each other. Sit them together in 1 week in a thought-through system like the Muslim Jewish Conference and its curricula. I'll tell you, I promise you, we've seen it empirically, you can change the tide. And what comes out of this? I'm not saying that we're changing the world here, but we're creating people that go back in their communities and start to stand up. And this is significantly more dangerous for the Muslims than the Jews, and this needs to be considered. If somebody goes back to Pakistan and starts advocating for Jews, that's a different story than if you go back to Berlin and talk about Jews, or Muslims for that matter. We had people that actually started to risk their health in order to speak about something that came close to their heart, because 1 week interaction with somebody that everybody else told them he's the devil. And that's, I think, the crucial next step for this generation. It's something completely simple if you listen to it. Talking to each other instead of about each other. It's a sentence, it's a nice soundbite, you can take that, you can use it or don't use it. But it's a fact, and that's the most important issue here. And if you bring an entire new generation in the Arab world, involved in the Arab Spring, and I'm not even judging these developments yet. I don't even want to say, I'm not a Middle East expert. I don't know how Egypt is going to develop. I don't know how Saudi Arabia is going to develop, and I don't know how Iran is going to develop. But I do know that the leaders of the next generation, sit in front of me and all of a sudden say, wow, you don't have horns. Wow, you don't rule the media. Wow, you guys didn't write the Elders of Zion. And these are the basic concepts to move towards each other. And on the Jewish side, it's the same thing. When I started this, the amount of stereotypes that I got broken in my head about Muslims, I always thought I'm a well-read Jewish European university student. Well, no. What I knew about Islam was as much as the Austrian right-wing FPÖ knows about Judaism and talks about that. So I'm very positive and I'm very optimistic about the situation in the Middle East after I see young representatives at my conferences that take their own life, which is in danger sometimes if they openly go to these conferences. They go back, they stand up for what they learn, they stand up in their own communities, in their own families sometimes, when there's talk about the Jews. The same happens now in our Jewish communities. And I think that this little step, talking to each other instead of about each other, is one of the most crucial starting points of not just a successful Arab Spring, but also a globalized and communicating, connected interfaith world. Thank you.
Question?
Yeah.
Just say your name and where are you from? And
My name is Olivia from Sweden. So you think the prejudice is completely unfounded? I mean, as a Jew, I've been harassed by Muslims several times. It's not something I'm making up. You think just 1 week talking with them is going to change my views or my experiences like this?
I think so, because I think it's also about the facts and the numbers. There are so many Muslims out there. If you have a picture, and I know about the situation in Sweden, which is especially dangerous in places like Malmö, etc. but I'm asking you something very bluntly, and I hope you don't take it disrespectfully. The Jews stood up for 5,000 years and complained about anti-Semitism. Has that ever changed anything so far? Not yet. So why don't we try a different tactic for once? Why don't we have Muslims standing up within Muslim communities and talking about the wrongness of anti-Semitism? Why don't we have Jews standing up in the Jewish communities and talking about what's going wrong? I think that that is something which so far hasn't happened too much, because these initiatives are something that started recently. There are not too many out there. But for you to go to an extreme young Muslim and tell him to stop being anti-Semitic, I can bet for about 100% that this is not going to work. But somebody within his own community, his own brother, his own father, for them to stand up in this situation, it makes a difference. I'm not saying that we have 50% interfaith activists in the Muslim world. But what I'm also saying is that you don't have 80% or 90% radical Muslims who go around the streets trying to beat others up. And in order to see these differences and to see the diversity within the Muslim world, you need to engage it and you need to talk to them. And without having talked to them and listened to them, you will never know what the differences are between those that attack and those who don't attack and might not be in the media and might not be visual and might not come out of their rooms and be as visual as the others that are actually a severe problem that needs to be dealt with.
And in a week you think they can be activists?
Okay. Can you
Your turn.
But we also have time afterwards in the breakout session as well, so I don't want to come too much.
No, I just really wanted to know if in 1 week you think they can be activists. I agree that we have to cooperate and organize more and more activities between Jews and Muslims and the right way. But I'm not sure that in a week I think it can be it have to be a process.
Absolutely. I'm not saying that in a week they're the perfect interfaith activists. What I'm saying is that a lot of people that would not have talked to you as a Jew, after a week are thinking of what projects they could do with you together in the world to change something. And Jane and Andy and many others from the AOJS team have been at the conferences, and they can prove that, for example, alone this year we have 7 projects that came out of this conference. And those are people that are not necessarily the most radical that you can find. I'm not saying we're going into Egypt, we're going into the hoods of the Muslim Brotherhood and we sit down with the hardcore people or in Iran and we try to convince them. No. But what I'm saying is that you have outside in the world, in the media world, only one narrative at the moment. And this narrative is spread by groups that wanna bring us apart. And these people are well-funded, they're well-motivated, they're very professional, and they're putting a lot of effort into media and into the world for people to think that Muslims and Jews should not or cannot live together in peace. If we now stand up, if only as a counter-narrative, if only as a small group that says, I'm sorry, but it's not always like that. We've seen in our conference 3 times already that every time we bring 100 young Jews and Muslims together, we have 15 projects that come out of it. All of these people never talked to the other side before. How come it works?
Either a trained expert or a professional expert in the subject matter that we're speaking about. But I think that makes it a little more interesting because I want to talk to you about the role of individuals in the process of change in society. I think that there's been several questions already addressed whether one person can change the world, especially in the face of a brutal dictatorship. And I would turn it back on Jews to say, isn't that the central story of Judaism? That is the story of Moses, of challenging the Egyptian Pharaoh to say that there's an injustice and that we're going to have a process of freedom. Right? If there's one thing that we should believe as Jews, is that one person can change the world, especially in the face of a brutal dictator. So I want to also talk to you about the question of optimism. Should we be optimistic or should we be pessimistic? I think an optimist, Ai Weiwei, who is a prominent Chinese artist and an incredible dissident who was also jailed just recently for about 3 months, was asked if he's an optimist, and he said, if I believe in the possibility of change, and I believe that I'm curious to explore that possibility, then I have to be an optimist. That a pessimist is someone who doesn't believe, that believes in the inevitability of the negative outcome. But if we have the ability to imagine a better future, a future that's different than today, then we should be optimists, and that we should be compelled to explore that possibility and to work with those people who have the bravery to stand up to what they believe is wrong. So it's first of all, it's a great honor to be here with Michael. And Michael, whether you agree with him 100% or not, whether you think that, is he right on the issue of Israel, this is not the point. Michael's bravery to stand up for what he believes is right in the face of a brutally violent dictatorship is nothing short of awe-inspiring. What he has experienced, not just the threat of a possibility, but what he has actually experienced is humbling. So for him to be here with us today is a great honor. So thank you. So just a little bit about myself. I became involved with the American Jewish Committee maybe 6 years ago. The AJC has been around for 100 years, and it has taken on some inspiring, it has made some wonderful achievements. The whole idea of this phrase, Judeo-Christian, that permeates the American discourse about what is the history of the United States. This is an idea that the AJC created. Let it be said that anti-Semitism was rampant throughout the United States just 100 years ago, and that the United States thinks of itself as having a Judeo-Christian heritage now is the work of the AJC. So this is what the AJC has demonstrated to me is possible in the United States. As soon as 1950, AJC said that we need to work on German-Jewish relations, reestablishing a relationship with Germany. And today we see that the Jews are welcome again in Germany, and that Germany is a wonderful military partner of Israel. So there is an inevitability of change. As soon as change doesn't happen, then we might as well just all go to sleep. So when I joined the AJC, they asked me what I was interested in, and I said, what's not going well? And they said Muslim-Jewish relations. And I said, that's a fucking surprise. So I started the so-called I was asked to be on the board of that institution informally, and I was an advisor to Mezer, working through the media nightmare that they had. But in that work that I was doing with them, I met certain people. I attended a conference in 2009 in Qatar. It happened to be during the last 3 days of the Israel-Gaza war, which is a wonderful time to be the only Jew at a room, at a 4-day conference in Qatar with 300 young Muslims from 75 countries. Needless to say, it was uncomfortable at best. But I met there some incredible people who would turn out to be leading activists in places like Saudi Arabia, well, particularly Saudi Arabia. So I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the people that I've met.
And that I think is very clearly, can be seen very clearly, but is hardly ever really brought up the way it should be. And this is the thing that the enemies of Israel and the enemies of the Jews are the very same enemies that of the Arab, or if you want, Iranian democracy. And that anti-Semitism and the hatred of Israel is not only a danger for Jews and for Israel, but that it's the very same ideology that is threatening the people in Iran and other countries. I'll give you one example, one recent example that had something to do also with Germany, and this is the example of the Iranian singer Shahin Najabi. Some of you might have heard of him. He's a young, wonderful musician who had to flee Iran in 2005 because he wrote a critical song about the regime, and he was sentenced to 2 years in prison and 100 lashes. So he fled to Germany, where he continued to make music, and suddenly this year in May, a couple of death fatwas, like a religious ruling, practically and as a result calling for killing him, like Salman Rushdie in 1989 came up from Iran. And but if you took a closer look at what these people were complaining about Shaheen Hashami, what they were really saying he was doing is that they were saying, look, this guy is practically a Jew or something, like he's controlled by the Jews or by the Zionists, etc. For example, when Germany protected him to some extent, I would have expected more, but the German government did something. What the mob in the regime, pro-regime mob in Iran did is go to the German embassy, and what they did is burn an Israeli flag. So, I mean, that's insane. You know, an Iranian musician is making a song against the oppression in his country, and what they're saying, what these people are doing is burning an Israeli flag. One other thing that was very interesting, some other pro-regime forces in Iran, they created a computer game where you could, shoot Shaheen Hashami, and so you have this figure of him dancing around, and you had to aim at him, and in the background was a giant Star of David. And plus, there you had the symbols of organizations like Facebook and Twitter and BBC and everything that is related to Western culture. So what these people are saying, that the moment that their own populations are demanding freedom, are criticizing their government, they are blamed of being somehow being Jews or being controlled by the Jews or being part of some Zionist conspiracy. And so this is really something extremely dangerous and threatening, and it's, as I said, the foundation and important part of the very ideology that oppresses freedom and democratic movements in the Middle East. Also women, for example. You have all the arguments that when women in Iran don't no longer want to be forced to wear the headscarf, they are always blamed, yeah, this is the somehow Western media or Zionist-controlled media that puts these thoughts in their heads. So I guess if you're communicating with Arabs, Iranians, Muslims, whatever, then I guess this should be an important issue to point to the fact that you both have common enemies, which are the Islamists and the Iranian regime, and that anti-Semitism is not only something that threatens Jews and thus you're against it, but that it's a very important part of this whole ideology. One last sentence, because maybe I'll add something to what Ilya said. I'm really, I find it really impressive what you're doing. I have a few doubts that came up from the audience about being maybe a little bit too naive in some aspects, but
you came here to Sarvash, and so it was an effort, and maybe. And I'm sure you did it because we are a special crowd. And I would like to know what is the final message. How would you summarize the message you wanted to tell by coming here? And why is this audience of European Union of Jewish students and European students, and also from Israel, some of them, and from America, many countries, 24 nationalities are here, important for you and for our fight? You start from. You start.
Okay, so first of all, of course, I'm very happy and thankful that I have been invited here, especially as a non-Jewish German. It's an honor to speak here. My message, well, I guess I'll just continue to what I said. Maybe my message would be that anti-Semitism and hatred against Israel is nothing that's only affecting Jews, but it's a danger to, in the end, every peace and freedom-loving person. So, maybe somehow representing someone from a broader coalition that maybe, you could try to create by reaching out to other people and not portraying these issues only as a Jewish issue, but by speaking out loud and saying, this very ideologies like Islamism are really dangerous for everyone. So.
I'm especially here because the Muslim Jewish Conference and the European Union of Jewish Students have a very intense relationship, I think since 2 years now already. The Muslim Jewish Conference is officially the advisor and consultant in interfaith affairs when it comes to the European Union of Jewish Students. And we worked very much with the last presidium already and worked with this one as well. I think personally that, of course, for me as an organizer of a Muslim Jewish conference, the constituency of European Jews, European young Jews, is one of the most important to us because I am convinced personally that especially in Europe, the relationship between Muslims and Jews is a crucial one. I think that we do not just share similar faiths, I'm convinced that the Muslim and the Jewish community in Europe will share similar faiths as well. And if you look at the discussion about circumcision, you see that it always goes to both communities. If you talk about freedom of religion, it will concern both communities. If you see the rise of the right wing changing the world in a day, there are very small projects that we have, there are bigger projects. Just come, reach me out, my cards will be here. AUJS and LJC, I'm sure, will work together in the future as well. And whenever you want something from us or you need to contact to us, you know where to find us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I think that if we look, I think that Jews need to be putting as much effort into the creative solutions as we are into our defense. I think that Israel, the existence of the state of Israel today, the fortitude of its economy, the stability throughout this economic crisis, the preparation of the IDF with the support of the United States, Israel. There are threats against it, but Israel is an incredibly able country to defend itself at the moment. And I don't criticize what Israel does in the name of its own defense. But I think that we as Jews living inside and outside Israel need to be as optimistic as we are defensive. And we need to put as much energy into exploring ways to create solutions with partners who are bravely standing up in the name of their own freedoms and their own communities. People like Michael and people that I know, that many more than I could enumerate right now. But we need to be developing relationships with them. We need to be supporting them. We need to be creating new relationships and imagining a future that's full of hope as opposed to one that's full of concern.
You told us yesterday that you don't give that much interview and you don't come and you are not a speaker in many events this day, and we are really grateful that you accepted and came here. I'll let you the last one.
Thanks. Topic, and also you are here dealing with topics which is like Egypt and Middle East and Iran, which is very sensitive for Jewish people, and this main topic is internationally is filled with a huge amount of lies and are promoted from everywhere, not from only one side, and I think my presence alone place around the world. You can find lots of peace activists, you can find lots of people who are willing to fight for peace and for coexistence. I'm here to understand more and to realize even the small things which can be missed by lots of politicians, and I'm here also to help clarifying and fighting lies which was spread about my country and about lots of things in the Middle East. I understand that this panel is a very, very small time for discussions, but I'm here until the end of the summer university.
Discussion.
And
there was no discussion.
Yes,
We're having another hour of discussions afterwards.
yes, I'm here until here 24 hours, so we are having our time to, I'm willing to answer all your questions, to have more discussions with you. and to clarify whatever I can clarify, and to understand your points of view, which will help me also as an activist in my activism, to make it work for me and for my country and for...
Per person. For all of us. All of you. You're already here. So people here have questions. To tell them not now, later, one person, that's ridiculous. It's
Okay, yes.
Okay.